Peace, y'all. It's the Klyph Notes podcast. Yo, this is crazy. This is the last episode of 2019. And even crazier, this is the last episode of the decade, man. It's crazy to think just how much time has passed since we started doing this situation, man. If you are a fan or a follower of DJ Klyph Productions, so you know that includes the Klyph Notes podcast, but also the Welcome to the Neighborhood radio show, which is really the foundation for the podcast. Celebrating 10 years of doing this whole situation and 5 years this year of the Klyph Notes podcast. So it's a time of celebration for many, many reasons. But yeah, man, this is the final episode of 2019, and it's been a great run of releases this year, man. You can go back and listen to some amazing conversations with some amazing people, hear some great stories. It's just been really fulfilling to do this year, man. December has been nuts. Released more episodes in December than in 1 month than we have earlier in the year. And we're really going out with a bang. Excited for y'all to hear this conversation that I had an opportunity to record with the gentleman who has done some pretty amazing things in his lifetime, continues to share knowledge and impact lives in an amazing way. So this conversation, I think, is one that you're really, really going to dig. But like I said, it's just a cool way to end 2019. Really looking forward to what 2020 has in store. May have even a special bonus situation for you before the year rolls over. Hey man, thank you so much to everyone who has tuned in, everyone who has shared, everyone who has contributed in any fashion to what I've been able to do with the Klyph Notes podcast and DJ Klyph Productions as a whole. It means a lot. You know, our goal is to provide a platform for people doing positive things in their community. And the reason I'm able to do this and the reason that I do this is for you. So thank you so much for your love and for your support. And like I said, man, looking forward to what 2020 has to hold. But let's just get into this latest episode of the Klyph Notes podcast. It's a dope conversation with a guy who goes by the name of A-Love. You may know him as Andy Seth. On this episode, Klyph Notes podcast. Support for the Klyph Notes podcast comes from Akepele Apparel, an idea born from a love of hip-hop, funk, and soul music and its surrounding cultures. With fashion being a huge visual part of the cultures, they've created expressive images to pay homage, invoke nostalgia, and showcase the elements that make up the lifestyle and cultures of these genres. Akepele, apparel for the music lifestyle. For more information, check out acapele.com. That's AKEPELE.com.
Ladies and gentlemen, the show you're about to listen to may contain explicit content. So guess what? You need to put them babies to sleep. This is for grown folks only. So we're not held liable for anything you might be offended by. Thank you for listening.
All right, we about to be straight for real.
Okay.
Yes, y'all. Welcome back to another episode of the Klyph Notes podcast, available everywhere you listen to your podcast. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and of course at klyphnotes.com. All right, y'all know how I do, man. I got to keep it 100 with y'all. We was like a good 15 minutes into a super dope conversation, and your boy had to hit the rewind right quick because we didn't hit. Nah, I ain't gonna say we. I ain't gonna try to put it on you like that because I didn't hit record. You know what I mean? But we starting this thing over, man, because we got to do it real proper, like. But actually, before we get too far into it, man, I gotta, you know how I do, man. I always got to give shout outs, man, to everybody who be checking out the podcast. You know, we super worldwide. Once again, the UK is repping hard and consistently, man. Big ups to Brazil for checking in, and then locally, man, cats who constantly show support. I got to give love to the homie Danny Ocean, who continues to show love to everything we do at DJ Klyph Productions. All right, y'all. So we gonna take it all the way back, man, because the story is super dope. It's dope to have an opportunity to chop it up with this cat who's done some pretty amazing things and has a dope story to share, man. So definitely want to share with my audience. But let me jump off the mic and have you introduce yourself.
You know how we do, man. I'm going to flip it one more time, just like I did before. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Love, L to the UV. ALUV is my DJ name. So I used to spin, man. That's the thing I wanted to share with you, like right up front, is I used to be a DJ too for like 10 years. Now I've moved into some other stuff, but that's my roots, man. And it stems all the way back from where I grew up. I grew up in LA. My family of four, we lived in a motel. It's called Lomita Motel. And Lomita is like a little town, 2 square miles in LA. Most people haven't even heard of it. But we lived in this motel and till I was 14, from 0 to 14. We didn't even own it, man. You know, like I used to front like we owned it, but we definitely did not own it. So we lived, growing up there, like it shaped me in a lot of ways, just like everybody's childhood shapes you. But that shaped me in a much different way. And music became like a big part of my life. A record store opened up right by us called Funky Town. And when Funky Town opened up, it was like a mecca. It was just this amazing place, like music all around. And I'm pretty sure most people that were in there were DJs. You know, it wasn't like casual people just flip through like crates and like, you know, like that. It was mostly DJs, and they had a live DJ in there who was usually like playing some tracks here and there so you could kind of hear what you might like, but also he'd put on the records and let you skip through it and stuff. So yeah, man. So like, you know, from DJ to DJ, it's cool to be on this show. I'm really excited about it too, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, and it's crazy because when we talk about the influences that we all have growing up, you know, I have the blessing to spend now and represent other people's music. But I can remember when I was younger coming up, and, you know, it was, for me, it was emceeing initially, you know, because that was the easy thing, you know, and to be honest with you, man, a lot of it was just access. Didn't have access to turntables, didn't have access to gear necessarily. But, you know, you could just be at the homie's house chilling and just be in the cypher rhyming. And so for me, that's really where it started. You shared a little bit of that experience walking into a record store, being able to see a DJ. But I remember, you know, for me, it was hearing it the first time and you know, hearing a DJ blend records together or hearing a DJ scratch and not being able to see it and wondering, man, like what is he doing? How is he doing that? So for you to have that be your introduction to it, I mean, that's pretty cool, a pretty cool jump off spot.
Yeah, I think so. You know, I've never really thought about it from like a standpoint of like emceeing is actually way more accessible, right? You just need to beatbox and spit lyrics. I think for me, it just, the serendipity was that the record store opened. And as when I first like went in there, I was trying to buy some records, and I think Caesar, who was the DJ there, kind of asked me like, oh, so what kind of music do you spin? And I was like, no, I just want to buy some records. I just want to check this thing out. And he's like, oh, bro, like, don't buy this. Like, he pointed me to some old school stuff like Atomic Dog, and you're like more like funk, kind of like classics. He's like, these you can always spin. So here, buy a few of these and then rent some turntables, and you can start to learn how to do it. And so my uncle had a garage. Obviously, where we lived, we didn't have space for turntables, but my uncle had a garage, and he said, yeah, you know, you could use it for the night. So we basically, me and my boy, rented some decks, $50 from this dude named Dominique. His business card said Dom Unique, and the phone number, right, was like 2 to the 1 to the 3 to the 5 to the 5 to the 5. You know, it was like, I was like, okay, we'll call Dom. So he comes, delivers the turntables. And so, like, I had a few records. I remember there was, like, we brought some, like, old ones that my boy's dad had. So he had some, like, Stevie Wonder stuff. We tried to play with that, mix it into, like, Herbie Hancock. And then, like, we had some, like, Nightcrawlers kind of house. We had, you know, we had a couple records. We were trying to, like, figure it out. Came back to the record store. Caesar was like, bro, you guys are a train wreck. Like, that is not how you do this. And so he kind of took us under the wing. But that was my introduction, was really, I rented some turntables, and we had to like kind of hustle our way to get the $50. But like, once we had that, you know, like we were off and running. And so that was really my introduction. I have still to this day very little rhyming skills on the mic, but I'm pretty good on the mic. I just don't spit lyrics now.
No, I feel you. We were talking earlier though about influences, man. I think when we consider folk who curate music or write music or produce music, you know, so much of that is influenced by what we came up on. Sort of,
for sure.
What did we hear that sort of sparked me to want to do this? So who were some of the folk who you heard early on that made you go, yo, I want to dig deeper into this?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in LA, so for me, it was really strong, like West Coast influence, and like the radio stations there were pretty much playing like I mean, maybe some stuff from the East Coast, but for the most part, West Coast. So it was folks that you would expect. You know, it was like Dre and Cube, Pac, of course, NWA. But then even like more local artists like MC Breed, Quick. Quick used to put out a lot of music, man. I don't know if a lot of people knew it. High C and Tony A. And then even up to the Bay Area, you know, like Mac Dre, E40, Too Short. So like pretty much running up and down the West Coast was like who influenced me. It wasn't until later when I started spinning that I could get records and be exposed to like, oh, this is what's going on in Chicago. They're doing a lot of house music. Oh, on the East Coast, New York, that's like how they do hip hop. I mean, I knew some of the music. It wasn't like I was ignorant to it. Yeah. It's just that spinning is what opened me up to it. So it wasn't played on the radio, then I wasn't gonna hear it. You know, like that's not how like music wasn't like it is today. It wasn't ubiquitous. Right. It was just like what you heard locally. So that's really who influenced me early.
That's what's up, man. And you know, here being here in Portland, Oregon, all of those artists, those are all familiar names. I know 40 is actually getting ready to be up here. It's crazy when you think of an artist of his caliber who's been doing it as long as he can. And so, you know, my audience, whether it be the podcast or the radio show, definitely rock with all of those folk. It's interesting also, man, when we consider hip hop where we are right now, and you know, hip hop is kind of middle aged, man. You know, been doing this thing for 40 some years now. And you have continued to have it be a part of your life, a part of your career, which is cool. How does that influence how you move now, though? Because you have grown into doing some new things, and doing things in maybe a little bit of a different light when we consider people who are creating hip hop, at least mainstream wise. So how does that early influence continue to influence how you move?
Yeah, you know, there's something that kind of just struck me that I haven't really like ever maybe really talked about a lot, but it kind of hit me. So I wanted to like maybe just share this. But hip hop, when we were growing up, was primarily like an urban thing. And then obviously it's become an everyone thing and worldwide. But growing up with hip hop as an influence like that started to challenge like a cultural identity issue for me. You know, and I think a lot of kids face this, but especially immigrant kids. And you know, I don't know if there's immigrants. I'm sure there's some immigrants listening to your show as well, right? Yeah. And something about being an immigrant kid, like your first generation, you're straddled into a couple of worlds, right? And for me, my parents are both from India. So they left India, let's say 1975, but they upheld what they knew of India, like as long as possible. So while India evolved in the 80s and 90s, my parents, what they knew of India was 1975. And so we kind of like have this like stuck in an old world piece of our culture. But it's not like I fluently speak Hindi. I speak some Hindi, but not like fluent. I speak way better Spanish for that matter. You know, so we have that. But then in America, we're also not purely American by a lot of people's standards. And so here's what's interesting, man, Klyph, is that hip hop is really what I found was like the most me. And like it makes me a little emotional about it, but there was something about hip hop and the music and the people that, first of all, it was a lot of people of color. And I didn't see a lot of Indians out represented anywhere. And where I grew up, I was mostly around blacks and Latinos. So like, that was more comfortable and familiar to me. And here was this like music genre that was people that looked a little bit more like me. And at that time, right? And they would talk about things that I would see, you know, like the motel we lived in was a small room. We paid weekly. Like what kind of place do you pay rent weekly is, you can start to infer things there. So it was like the surroundings that I understood more, and hip hop gave me a lot of comfort. Like I wasn't experiencing all the things that people experience, but it just felt like, these are kind of like, this is my crew. And when in a situation where I'm feeling culturally like not agnostic, but almost like apathetic, you know, I was kind of like, well, can I cuss on this show?
Yeah.
Oh, well, so I was like, well, my own family in India is like, well, we don't really like talk to you because you don't speak Hindi. And I was like, well, fuck them then. Like, you don't want to like. I'm sorry, I didn't like educate myself on a language on as a little kid. Like I don't know how to do that, right? Like, and then in America too, like generally speaking, it didn't really feel like it was for me, but hip hop always felt like it was for me. So I share all that, man. That's the first time I've even like really put that together. But I share that because hip hop isn't just like, oh, here's some music and I like to listen to it. It was a culture from the get-go that embraced everybody who wasn't part of the other. Yeah. And like when we start to really trace back the roots of like Kool Herc and La Rock and right, like they were rhyming over breakbeats during the time of Studio 54 and disco.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And like that 54 disco era was for like a different crowd.
Yeah.
And so they were making it. So it makes sense like that this music hit me that way. And so, yeah, it's influenced me now, but it influences me deeply, not just like, oh, like, yeah, I make hip hop music.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, but it feels more like the culture.
Yeah, yeah. That's what's up, man. And I so appreciate that because I think to a certain degree, and I'm an old head, bro, you know what I'm saying? So to a certain degree, that resonates so much with me because I think in terms of mainstream, we've gotten away from that. You know, we've gotten away from the heart of the art, and it's become, it sounds so cliche-ish, man, it's become commercialized, and a lot of folk I think see this as that way out or that opportunity to get on, or and we forget that you know this art form has been and can continue to be used to make changes in people's lives in a huge way if we allow it to. If we don't forget the opportunities that we do have available to us through this art form.
Yeah, totally.
So I definitely resonate with that.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that in so many ways now is what influenced like my book, my album, and these are things that I'm sure we're kind of unlocking. But if we can kind of move into that, you know, this year I wrote a book and it's a parable. And the book is called Bling. Mm-hmm. The book is a parable about a rapper who goes on a spiritual journey. Mm-hmm. And something that I guess kind of like the story came to me, but I think the reason why I was a good person to tell this story was I felt like there's a consciousness movement already occurring within hip hop. Mm-hmm. Right? Hip hop has always been from its roots about the plights and struggles and suffering of people. Yeah. And yes, it has gotten to a commercial level that's different. And that's not to say that it's necessarily good or bad. I personally more resonate with like when people are trying to figure their way out of the struggle. But because there's a movement happening around like, well, how can we stop struggling as a people? Right? That's basically the question here is like, we don't have to buy into the things that we've been taught. We don't have to eat the way we used to eat. We don't have to do things like drugs the way we used to do drugs. And I'm not against anything, but I'm just saying like, you don't have to just accept it wholesale. Yeah. And that consciousness movement is happening in hip hop where people are questioning stuff, right? Like you're seeing a lot of artists go vegan, for example. Yeah. A ton of artists. And that's very different than the kind of food that they used to eat growing up. Those same artists, right? And so when I wrote this book, Bling, about a rapper who goes on a journey, a lot of it is because I want to advance this movement. This is my culture too. Right? You guys, everybody, you guys meaning you in hip hop, like have embraced me. Well, I'm trying to contribute right back into it. And I made a good living also as a DJ. And so like I've been a part of that culture, but now I'm trying to contribute to this movement. And by writing Bling and producing a soundtrack to it under the same title, Bling, I feel like there's a message that will hit home with people who vibe with hip hop. Yeah. Right? It's how do you tell some of these Eastern ancient wisdom, right, that comes from India mostly, right, the pieces of meditation and being at peace and all that stuff. But how do you tell that in a way that people want to hear it today? Yeah. And for me, it was like, well, I'm not trying to tell it to everybody, but my people are down with hip hop. Yeah. And my people will get this story. So it's not for everybody, and I get that. But if you are into hip hop and you were trying to like make yourself better and go into self improvement, this is the book for you. This is the album for you. I did this for you. Yeah,
that's what's up. Well, and you know, I think when we consider that the opportunity to use whatever platforms that we have to share experiences that we have we talk about the come up, but the come up is really just betterment of self, right? In whatever that looks like for you.
Yeah.
But then also having a good understanding of or a remembrance of, or going back to, or tapping into right and wrong, good and bad, or good and evil, or however you phrase that.
Yeah.
And so for you to use your creative skills to express it this way, both in the written word and in the audible word, I think is pretty cool. When you were putting this project together, did you always have the thought and the idea of, I want to do the book, but I want to make sure that there is that soundtrack to go along with it? Was that a part of the idea from jump?
No, it kind of came to me. So you ever have that feeling, like, I'm gonna call it a calling, but there's something that's just like, man, like it comes out of nowhere, and then all of a sudden you can't let it go.
Yeah.
That to me is like your soul really speaking through, right? Yeah. When I was writing the book, towards the end of it, the main character goes through this big transformation and creates this kind of magnum opus, album.
Yeah.
And I'm writing about Indian like influences in hip hop, and I'm hearing sounds. I'm hearing like, yo, this sound would be dope over this beat, like these Indian sounds and these Indian instruments over this hip hop. And there are songs like that, like back in the day, Jay-Z did one with Punjabi MC, Eric Sermon did React, like if you want to call Uchi Wally a song still, but like there's a few out there from back in the day, but there's not a lot. And for somebody like me who likes that kind of East-West, there's not a lot out there. And I started hearing it, and I was like, yo, this would be cool. And I thought it would be for an audiobook. I thought these sounds that I was hearing would be like the score of an audiobook. Right. So I went Googling it, looking like what exists, and it didn't exist the way I was hearing it or envisioning it. Yeah. And so I was like, well, you know what? Like, why don't I just make these? I can get a crew together. Let's make some beats. And I was like, well, I just wrote a book, and I've been writing poetry on my own. I wonder if I could try my hand at lyrics.
Yeah.
And so I started working on some lyrics with some writers also. So I haven't done anything by myself in terms of the music. I put myself in a position where we could make a really good album, not like I'm going to try this.
Yeah.
Like I know as a DJ, what's good music.
Right.
If you needle drop and skip through it, if I don't hear it in 10 seconds, I'm out on the next track, right?
Yeah.
I needed my music to pass my own test.
Word.
And so I put a team together with me, but that was basically like what happened was I wanted to make the music that was in my head, and from there it went on a whole journey. I started talking to my dad about music. My dad's huge into old folk Indian music, and so I was like, well, tell me about this instrument and this song and what's this thing. So we're pulling from ghazals, and we're pulling from qawwali, and we're pulling from Sufi poetry. Like, we're pulling all these influences and then putting it into hip hop.
Yeah.
And what we've got now is this album, man. And I think the people that understand it, that vibe it, is great. And one lesson I learned, I've been a board chairman for a nonprofit, a school system called KIPP, K-I-P-P. Yeah. They're the largest charter schools in the nation. And so I've been chairing the board for Colorado. I remember walking into a classroom once, and this teacher was teaching history through rhyme. And I was like, what is happening? And these young kids were rapping.
Yeah.
And so what she taught me was the power of music and how much we can recall. Like, if I asked you to spit a lyric from one song from 1990, you could. But if I asked you to recite a paragraph from a book, I'm going to bet you probably can't.
Yeah.
Most of us can't do one, but we can do the other. So what I started to realize was when I had the sounds and I had this idea of making music, I realized, you know what? This is actually a powerful way to spread the music or the message. It's a powerful way to spread the message because people will hear it. They'll recall it. If they read the book, it'll trigger what they read. But this is a way that they can get the lessons without always having to go read the book over and over again. Yeah. And that's what ultimately is what poured through. So I put everything I could into making a great album.
That's what's up.
Yeah.
Chopping it up with the homie A-Love. Yo, the album and the book both have the same title as Bling. It's available. The album's available everywhere that you get your music from. The title Bling, what's the significance of that?
So, Bling obviously in hip hop is all about the show and the fancy and the ice and all that stuff, right? And this rapper who goes on the journey has all the things. It's actually like loosely influenced by Nas. He's like young, comes out with this, kind of like an epic album that stands the test of time. But over the years, he gets more and more bling, gets bank account grows. But the music everyone kind of knows is like, it's just not like the first one, right? And I think a lot of people will resonate with that with Nas. And no offense to Nas, but like that's kind of how I feel about Nas's music. When Illmatic came out, right? It was like that changed everything. And so over the course of this journey that this rapper in the book goes on, he turns from the bling on the outside to, well, what's inside me? And it wasn't shiny. It was just cold, and starts working on himself to the point where he starts to get blinged up inside. And so I wanted to flip the name Bling, or the word bling, to mean something more than just showing off and having the status, money, and ice. Like, that's not the thing that's important. And what you're seeing are like all the OGs now from hip hop, they're talking about this. The OGs are talking about it. I know the young guys are saying like, hey, I'm about all that life, but I get it. They need to go through their journey too. But the OGs right now are coming out like, hey, this didn't mean shit, man. Like, I'll tell you what's real right now is like, be at peace. Like, be at peace with yourself, heal yourself. Like, they're talking about that. And so I want to just turn that word bling around to represent what's really inside. But it's also something that resonates with everybody in our culture.
No doubt. And for me, that goes back to what we were talking about in terms of the age of hip hop. I think hip hop has matured to an age now where you have people who have respected voices who can give that different perspective.
For sure.
Say, this is a different way to look at life and how we move through life, and understand that you don't necessarily have to go down the same roads that I went down. You don't have to make the same mistakes that I made. I mean, it sounds like parent talk, but that's just real. That's just real grown folk talk.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, think about, Klyph, like the 21-year-olds now, right? That's the number now, is 21. How many kids are dying at 21 in hip hop, man?
Yeah, it's crazy. Especially, we're recording this at the end of 2019. Especially just within the last several months, what we've seen. Artists who were on the come up, whose lives are gone so quickly because of, from what we've been told, from just poor decision making. And it absolutely doesn't have to be that way. I think one of the things that we can be sure of is that a lot of times folk lose themselves in looking for that peace, looking for that escape, looking for that, I want to numb the pain from everything that's going on around me, whether it's the situation that I grew up in, or it's what I see happening around me in my community, or what I see in my country, or just what's happening on this planet. And I know that that's something that is important and valuable to you as a human being, not just as an artist or a curator. And you share that there are other ways to find that peace through different means. Another thing that I think is interesting is that you have had successes in life as you've moved through your life, and you haven't just sat on that. You've taken that and shared it, giving people opportunities. Can you talk a little bit about some of the opportunities that you create for others and have created for others?
For sure. I mean, first of all, I've just been blessed on like an entrepreneur level, that I started pretty young. So DJing was my first business, and that was a business for 10 years that moved from like learning how to DJ to headlining 6 nights a week in Boston, promoting clubs, and so getting a cut of bars and doors. How like that's a full-on business in and of itself. And so from there, by the time I graduated college, I had actually started 2 internet companies and sold them. I've gone on to build 9 companies. I've had 4 pretty successful exits. My last one was a wealth management firm, which we built up to 100 million in assets. Like, from a business standpoint, I've worked hard, sure, but I've also had some pretty good blessings along the way there. On that path, I've never once felt like this was all for me. I've always felt like I needed to help other people. And here's why. The part that people don't know about me, when you see kind of from the outside, and if you like look at me, you might say, oh, like, I don't know, he kind of like, he might have come from money, or he's made, or whatever, right? What people don't realize is at 14, we left the motel because it got torn down, but I got a full scholarship to a high school. And the high school is called Culver Military Academy. It's a military academy in the middle of Indiana, just right by Notre Dame. And that school, if you looked up endowment sizes for high schools, is top 5 in the nation. Wow. Just to give you kind of an idea of the caliber. Military was a leadership system, not a disciplinary system. Yeah. People like George Steinbrenner from the Yankees and Ross Perot and the founder of the Weather Channel and the founder of KKR, like all these companies, these folks went to Culver. Yeah. They believed if we give a low-income kid who's willing to work hard a shot at going to the school, they may do something. I was one of those kids. I just fit their thesis.
Yeah, yeah.
I got good grades. I was a low-income kid, and I got a shot. And I used that shot for everything. I graduated top of the high school class from military, academically, cum laude, top 5 in my class, number 2 in military rank, a 4-year, 3-sport varsity athlete. Like, man, I used everything I had at my disposal and earned a full scholarship then to Boston College. Wow. The exact same thing. People believe in this concept. This is important because I've been the recipient of people who were generous. I've been on that side. Yeah. So as I made my come up, no question I've been gotten groomed, right? Like, look where I went to school. I went to school with the best of the best in terms of like financial success. Yeah. And their kids, right? I got groomed. So I saw the power of giving back. So as I made my journey from early on, it wasn't even like I had these big wins yet. From early on, I started volunteering. From the age of 18 till today, there hasn't been a week that I haven't volunteered at least 2 hours a week other than vacations.
Wow.
At least 2 hours a week. And that is, I'm 41 now. Yeah. So we're talking about a good run here. So, like that has always shaped me. But now, and for a long while, I've led nonprofits to work with kids that are basically me and younger, right? Yeah. So Minds Matter is one of them. I'm the board chairman there. We mentor low-income kids, get them into college with scholarships. And in the 15 years I've had the organization here in Denver, we've now expanded into Colorado, but we've had 100% of our kids who graduate from a program go to college on scholarships. Wow. And now I have colleges on the other side of this who guarantee, if you put one of your kids through your program, we guarantee them entrance, admission, and scholarship. Schools like CU Denver, Colorado State University, School of Mines, like they're all lined up on the other side saying, put a kid through your program, we got you on the other side. So yeah, that's really important to me. And then when I started my latest company, I had the exit, and it was the kind of exit that like in many ways people would dream of. I have like kind of all the money, time, resources, but I wanted to like still do something. I didn't want to get out of the game and like invest only. That's kind of the typical route is like, okay, you got money, now become an investor. I was like, no, I still like the game. But I asked myself, like, what problem do you want to solve? And the problem that I wasn't solving was the kids who were low income not going to college. The kids that were not going to college is a bigger population. Yeah. And they're even more fucked. Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I wanted to put my attention. So I built, I had the idea of taking the Switzerland model of apprenticeships. I had learned about it through my wealth management business and finance. They have a gold standard of apprenticeships. And I asked, why can't we have like white collar job apprenticeships in America? We got all these blue collar job apprenticeships, but like what about things that aren't labor? Yeah. Why can't we put kids through that? Yeah. And there's no reason why we can't. There's literally no reason. So I created the nation's first digital marketing apprenticeship. And that means that kids go through, they're 18 to 24-year-old, low income. They go through a 2-year apprenticeship where they're getting paid for 40 hours a week to do a job. They have a full-time job. They have benefits. But on top of that, they go to some classes after work. We use the knowledge that they have from the classes and reapply it back into the business. So now they get hands-on application. Gotcha. So it's not just theory. They're actually doing some of that. And as they do some of that, it generates more productivity for the business. So I pay them more. So they start off at somewhere around $11, $12 an hour. After 2 years, they're making $20 an hour, which is 40 grand or more. Yeah. So they've broken poverty with no college degree. And digital marketing is a path. It's a career. Yeah. Yeah. And so I've created that inside the business. We're now federally registering this apprenticeship so that any company can knock off my apprenticeship. This is not for me. This is good business. I make a lot of money because of this apprenticeship, meaning I pay somebody a low amount, I train them up, and now I make more money off them and I'll pay them a little bit more, right? That's good business. Yeah. But what I'm also doing is helping them break poverty. That's the point of all this. Right. I want everybody to look at this and say like, oh, I could use a digital marketer Why don't I just create an apprenticeship? Oh, here's the playbook on how to do it, right? And as a result, there's this thing called B Corps, which is companies worldwide that have been independently audited for their social impact. They're known as B Corps. Patagonia, for example, is one of them. Flow, my company, was rated top 10% of all B Corps worldwide for our social impact.
Wow, that's huge, B.
That's huge. Yeah. And make no mistake about it, we are very profitable too.
No doubt.
So that, to me, is the two-trick pony. All my business life, I've always, done business, make money, use that money, and go do some good in philanthropy. It's always been two separate things. This was, how can I do them both together for real? This is for us right here in America. And like, look, I might have I have plenty of family in India who could channel me into like helping poor folks there.
Yeah.
But I'm saying like, no, let's help the people here, right? How do we help our people? There's people that need this and they need a shot. Yeah. People believed in me and gave me a shot. I'm believing in some other people and giving them a shot. And that's what we do. Here's the thing. It turns out it's great business. And we can use business as a mechanism to change people's lives. It's not that we have to ruin them, which is what business has been doing for too long.
That's huge, B. It's cool because it all for you started with just getting an opportunity.
Yeah.
And now that's what you're providing for other folk. And for so many people, man, it's simply access. Like having an understanding that something like that even exists. That can absolutely change. It has obviously changed people's lives. So big ups for you for taking advantage of those opportunities and then giving those opportunities to others.
Yeah. There's a saying in Hindi, which if you translate says basically that when a river flows, that if it stays stagnant, disease occurs, right? Stagnant water is where you get disease. Right. But if a river continues to flow, everyone can benefit from it. It's healthy water. You can bathe, you can drink, you can use it for whatever, right? So in that way, money is like a flowing river. It comes to me, I either hoard it and stagnant, and if I keep it stagnant, what's going to happen? Disease is going to occur within me. Or I start sending it back to other people. It's not to say that my family has no savings. I mean, let's not be foolish, but the point is like you keep giving as much as you possibly can, either money, time, knowledge, right? Like give something of yourself. You'll find that more comes your way because you're the kind of person who gives. Yeah. The kind of person who gives receives. Yeah. It's just how it goes.
Yeah. That's what's up, man. If folk are hearing this and are thinking, man, that sounds pretty cool. I feel like I want to tap into that, or I want to get more knowledge. What's the route that folk would take to do something, just to get more info or to be a part of what you're building?
Yeah. I think the first thing I would suggest is if you want to make an impact, right? That's what we're talking about. If you want to make an impact, there's a couple rules I would give you, and I've written about this on my blog too. So I guess first, if you want to check out some blog articles specifically around what I call strategic giving, it's go to andyseth.com, and I've written a lot about this. Strategic giving is the thing I would want to teach our audience. There's people who give and they bleed out. Yeah. And when you bleed out, you can't give anymore. Yeah. I'm not about that. I'm not about people bleeding out, and I'm not about people that come from low-income backgrounds to go and like take jobs that don't make any money, but they're helping people. That's not how. I don't believe that that's the right path for most people. And what I mean is like this: a lot of the kids that we mentor, for example, they want to become like social workers and teachers because they've received the giving. Right. They know how good it feels, and they want to go do it. Right. And I come and I tell them, guys, like, that's great. Like, help people, but leave those lower paying jobs to people that have the safety net. You need to break poverty and you need to smash that shit. Man, because you got people you're trying to come up with.
Bro, that's like such a different mind. Like, and it's cool, but it's such a different mindset, right? We don't think that way, right? My experience has been this, so that means that this is where this is for me, and this is what I pass on to my children and the next generation.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like we all have this like truth in us. We know like, man, I just want to fucking be done with all this poverty stuff. Like, I want to bring my family up. I want to bring my friends up. Well, like, you can't just kind of like have a job that barely breaks poverty. You need to smash through that shit. When I sold my second company, I bought my parents a place to live.
Wow.
Right? They could retire. My dad could retire. Like, I'm telling you, that's a game changer. Yeah. So let's not be shy about the fact that we who have no safety net growing up, we need to fucking make a lot of money. Yeah. And here's the thing. We don't have to suffer inside for that ambition. That's what's really important. Most people feel like, well, if I'm going to go after this money, I'm going to suffer. I got to feel pain. No, fuck that. You don't need to feel pain. Mm-hmm. What I'm teaching in my book, Bling, is exactly how do you be ambitious and at peace. That is the point. Yeah. You can be both. It's a false dichotomy that society has given us. Like, well, if you're going to be a hustler, like, you can't ever be satisfied. Yeah. Why not? Yeah. That sounds like a lot of bullshit. That sounds like you just trying to keep me down on something. But like, that's not true at all. Yeah. And you don't also have to like relinquish the material world in order to have this inner peace and be in robes all your life, and you can't live like in the real world. No. I'm absolutely not. Yeah. So it's important if you're trying to make an impact. First of all, you got to impact yourself. Number one, you've got to be, when I say strategic giving, you've got to have something to give. Mm-hmm. The cup has got to be full.
Say that.
You can't be pulling, poking a hole in your cup and letting it leak out. Like, what's that mean? I'm gonna put some numbers to this because I feel like people get this in theory, but I'm gonna make it very tangible. If you make less than $75,000 a year, don't give your money away yet. Maybe a few bucks here and there to help some people out, sure, but we're not talking about like very meaningful impact financially. Yeah. Okay. You need to get to the $75,000. The reason is that studies show at $75,000 or more, there is no change in the person's happiness on how much they make. It's just a matter of comforts and conveniences now. Okay? But before 75, you feel the pain of not having money for or resources for things.
Yeah.
Okay? Yeah. And so that to me is like a very specific piece of advice. When you've gotten over that 75 mark, try to find something you can volunteer in that fits a few criteria. One is volunteer time, but at least 2 hours a week. That's why I told you that number before, that I've at least 2 hours, maximum of 20. 20 is a shitload, by the way. Yeah. But I have been on the other side of that. I've run nonprofits as an executive director for free. So I've been on the other side of 20. Studies show that between 2 and 20 is the optimal time per week that you want to volunteer in order to feel like you made enough of an impact. Those 2 to 20 hours a week, let's call it more realistic, 2 to 10. Okay? 2 to 10 should be blocked off in time. Don't do, let's say you did 5 hours, don't do 1 hour a day. If you can do a 3-hour block and a 2-hour block. What happens is if you do 1 hour a day, it feels like work. It gets mixed in with your calendar and you just do this thing and it feels like work. It doesn't give you the sense that you're looking for. And it doesn't also give you concentrated time to make a bigger impact. If you block off 2 hours and 3 hours, you can do a lot more in a flow state because you can trigger flow for a few hours. You can't trigger flow for like 1 hour.
Gotcha.
So you got that block plus the fulfillment that comes back is massive because it doesn't feel like work. That's the time that you use to go make an impact. So if I give you a few of these rules, these start to put you on the path of how you become strategic. I want everyone that listens to this to not become a bleeder. Do not bleed out for your generosity. Gain from the generosity, but gain internally, not financially. This isn't because you're going to make a lot of money. What I say is, studies show this too. If you are the kind of person who is a giver, you do make more money, but it can't be because you want to make money, right? That's why I say you have to already have satisfied the money equation at 75K. Then after that, you can start to do a little bit more on the impact side, but you got to solve that stuff first. Otherwise, if you're not taking care of the in-house, like, how can you help other people? It's very difficult to the point of, like, you'll bleed.
Yeah.
I don't want you to bleed.
No doubt. Man, A-Love in here dropping knowledge bombs on them, man. For real. You touched on it a little bit, and so I want to be sure to, to circle back and encourage people to check out the blog. There's so much cool information on your website. And the blog is dope, man. Some of the articles that you've written are dope. I love the one that, where you're shouting out some folk who are like who I'm fans of, people who use their art like you have to make an impact on people's lives. I mean, you talk about Common, you talk about Lauryn Hill, you talk about Dead Prez. Those, again, using those platforms for enlightenment, which I think is dope. But other gems that are on your website for people to tap into. But one more time, and let them know what the website is.
Yeah, andyseth.com.
That's what's up. Nice and easy that way.
Yeah.
We talked about it a little bit. The album Bling, which is the soundtrack to the book Bling, is available on all streaming platforms. If people are hearing this and they're like, "Yo, this is like, I want to check out the book now," where, how do people do that?
Amazon, baby.
That's what's up.
That's Amazon, what's up. And I'm blessed right now, man. As of this day, we've got 75 reviews on the book, 4.9 stars. So, yeah, man, it's caught. It's caught. We were #1 bestseller the day we came out. And so, that was a big blessing, just coming out #1 bestseller. Not #1 new release, #1 bestseller. And so, man, I just know the message it's hitting people. It's hitting them at home. The reviews might be one of my favorite part of this whole process, because that's people telling me how it touched them. That's people telling me that. And so, just check it out at Amazon. It's, on all the things like Kindle and paperback, hardcover. And I'm going to record an audiobook, and I'm going to put the music into it too, because we got a really cool thing now that we've got both, right? Right. So we'll come out with that in 2020.
That's what's up, man. I'm a firm believer. I think the older I get too, I'm a firm believer in, you got to give people their flowers while they're alive to smell them. And that's one of the cool things about having, this platform to do such a thing. So once again, man, I just want to say that what I've learned of you thus far, really, really grateful to again, you using your platform for impacting people's lives, for making a difference in people's lives, but even more so for giving people opportunity through music, as well as other means that you're giving people opportunities and access, man. I mean, at the end of the day, we're limited by our exposure, we're limited by our experience, and so when you can share those messages and gems of positivity, you change lives, man. So big ups to you for choosing to, like you said, not just sit on what you've gained, but taking that and influencing others and teaching others how to do the same, man. So big ups to you.
No, I appreciate you, and to your fans too. I want to give you some props on something very specific, which is that a lot of the interviews that I get are about my business successes. They're about even the book. Very few people give me the opportunity to talk about the music. Very few people have given me the opportunity to talk about the culture and what it's meant to me. That for me is the best gift, man. I got goosebumps if you could see it. It's real, because it's so powerful. It's such a meaningful part of my life and my culture and my history. And I don't know. I think maybe people get blinded by the financial success and want to talk about that because they want to know how do I make that? And I get that. But my man, thank you for letting me talk about music too, and hip hop, and being focused in that area, because there's so much more to this story when you start to peel back, and you peeled it back in a way that nobody else has gotten to. So I just want to say thank you for that, man. That's a genuine love for you and your craft and how good you are at this. And I think that's probably why your fans enjoy listening to you, man, because this is you take a different approach on somebody who looks pretty Forbesy. You know what I'm saying? And I get that. Yeah. But you put me on, so thank you.
That's what's up, B. That's what it's about, man. It's about that's real community, man. So that's what we do. Look, bro, I so appreciate you. I know your schedule is tight. I know you got other things on the schedule, so I really appreciate you taking the time to come through and chop it up. And like I said, man, just drop gems, drop knowledge bombs on us all. Truly appreciate you, man. For real, for real.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
For real, for real. A-Love, a.k.a. Andy Seth, live on the Klyph Notes podcast. I appreciate you, brother.
All right, you too, man.
Once again, man, y'all can check out the Klyph Notes podcast everywhere you listen to your podcast: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, klyphnotes.com. You can hit us up on the email at klyphnotes@gmail.com. And then, of course, you can follow me everywhere at DJ Klyph, djklyph.com. A-Love, the album is out. The book is out. It's called Bling. Check it out. It has the potential to change your life, for real. All right, y'all. Until we have an opportunity to do this again, y'all be blessed. Peace.
Peace.